right. All right. Thank you. Welcome to Evan Talks. This is Evan J. Kopelson. You can call me Ev. We are here tonight to talk about the COVID-19 lockdowns from a couple of different unique perspectives tonight. So the country is in lockdown. Different states are not. People are dying. I know some of them. There is a lot going on, and we have to start to unpack a lot of what we're not being told, okay, in the press, and start to look at some of the first of all, I want to look at the lockdowns from the perspective of OSHA health and safety protocols. So we're going to get into that tonight. And then we're going to get into it from a constitutional perspective. So it's going to be, I'm going to wear two hats tonight, and I'll get into that when I start with the slides. But anyway, look, if you're getting this video later, make sure that you get notifications. So go to my profile, my personal profile right now, Evan Kopelson, and choose where it says that we're following, that you want to see my posts first, okay? So that way you'll always know when I come on. So it's great to be here. We're just getting started. I have slides and a very detailed presentation tonight. And tonight is really foundation laying. So tonight we're going to get into, like I said, some basics from the health and safety perspective. We're going to look at some of these lockdowns. We're going to look at OSHA health and safety protocols and how health and safety inspectors actually would take on this issue of preventing a hazard, assessing a hazard, and trying to mitigate the risks to the hazard. Okay, so we're going to talk about lockdowns, we're going to talk about PPE, all that kind of stuff. And then from a constitutional perspective, we're going to get into that too. I'm going to put on my lawyer hat and talk to you about, break down kind of what the elements are, because I think if I can break it down for you guys, from both perspectives, we can start to unpack a lot of the stuff, the BS that's coming from the media. They're really not telling us enough information. They're spoon feeding us and kind of shoving a bunch of like very specific stuff down our throats. We've got, we're going to do like a lot of different stuff. Okay. So, tonight I want to, before I get started, okay, because I will, here, I'm going to change scenes like, oh, wait, I already did the theme. Okay, so let me turn the theme music off. We're going to go down the rabbit hole together, okay? So that's kind of what's going to happen. And I've been talking about this for a while, and some of the people that I've been connecting with recently, there is a small subset of friends that I have that seem to be awake to certain things that are going on. There is a lot of confusion out there. And I think there's a lot of, we're going to talk about, we're going to use words like sheep and sheeple, and we're going to talk about being awake and waking up. And we're going to be looking at stuff. Okay. But I just want to like get you hip to that. But actually tonight, we're not going to go that deep tonight. We're going to lay foundations. Okay. So I want to talk to you and just kind of see where everybody's coming from. And also like, let you know, I'm thinking about like, here, I'll pull down the wizard's curtain for a second, and we can just talk. Okay. So like coming to you here from my bedroom. Okay. And it's a very simple situation, but I have a green screen here and I can do all kinds of Hollywood magic. Okay. But let me just tell you guys that there's so much going on right now. I know people who are losing their parents. I know several people who have lost parents in the last 2 weeks. So, I have a lot of opinions about how the virus is being overly dramatized and used to do power grabs, and how, certain people are benefiting from that, and what the end game is. So when I say rabbit hole, we're going to go down a bunch of those little tangents, and we're going to see financial incentives and other things. We're going to piece things together, because when it comes to critical thinking, they don't want you to know. They don't want us to know a lot of stuff. They tell us what they want us to think, and then they have us kind of arguing over the little tidbits that they throw out to us, which is a lot of disinformation. Okay, so look, before I get started and get into commentary and thoughts and all of that stuff, it's important that we humanize the situation. Okay, there's I'm losing friends left and right that I've known, and I'm making a lot of new friends. And I talk about one of my friends mentioned to me the other day. She's like, well, you're up leveling, and that's going to happen because you're going to lose people along the way. And it kind of does feel like that, like a hydraulic lift of water, and then the water's like spilling off to all the sides. So it's like there are people who do not want to go down these rabbit holes. They don't want to talk about stuff. If it's not on the news, they don't think it exists. And you know what? Here's what it is. It's like we're in a really incredible time right now, and it's really important. And I've got the flags going because you know what? If there's ever been a time to think about what America stands for and what we're supposed to do as citizens with civic duties, it's now. So there's people I know on all sides of the issue, people who think that their civic duty is to be good sheep, okay, and to, quell anybody who has a voice, and to just do everything that's told to them because they still believe or they want to believe. Then there's the people who are completely distrusting of all, like the anarchists, my anarchist community friends. And, they don't want any state government, and state government is organized crime. Okay. And so if you think about it, the government, we wish that it was there to protect us, but it's not. It's there to extract money from us and then use that money to carry out different operations around the world. Okay, so we're not going to go down that particular rabbit hole tonight, but I'm just saying that there's friends who are actually losing their parents and losing their friends, and having people, my friends on the East Coast really going through a different experience. And so to be, I don't want to be cavalier about anything that's going on in California. We're having a much different experience, and there's a lot more to be seen on the draconian side that's going on here with like overreaching of different, rules and restrictions and lockdowns and a lot of stuff. So in the coming days and weeks, we're going to do a lot of this stuff together, and we're going to look at it. It just was taking me a while to get started. I've wanted to come on and start talking about this stuff for like 2 weeks, and I'm doing some posting, and I'm spending hours a day posting and talking to people. So I know people care. And now I feel like there's a couple of different unique perspectives that I can offer because of experiences and training and certifications that I happen to have, okay, for the consulting work that I've done over the years. So let's get into that now, okay? So I just want to say my heart goes out to my friends and everyone who's lost people and losing people. And it's a terrible thing to lose family, and I've lost both my parents to other things, to health conditions in the past. My dad passed a couple of years ago, and my mom passed when I was a kid. So I know what it's like to see someone deteriorate. I know what it's like to lose someone quick. I've lost quick people. I've lost slow deteriorating people. It is horrible to lose somebody, and to have a new virus on the block that seems to be sweeping the world and taking out people by the tens of thousands is terrifying. And the way it's being presented, and the way in certain subsets we are seeing it actually operate, it is terrifying and it is brutal. Then again, there is a lot of science that's coming out in the last week or two, and a lot of it's being suppressed already by Google and by YouTube taking down videos. And it tends to show that the initial projections given to the world that led to these lockdowns and the hysteria that we're going to, run out of hospital space and all that stuff, it just isn't turning out to be. And then there's an argument of whether all the social distancing and all that stuff actually contributed. But then you look at countries that aren't doing masks and social distancing and stuff like that have like way lower rates. Like Tokyo has like 100 people dead. They have the same density of population as New York City. So there's a lot to look at. It is not the place here with me to talk about repeating talking points that are being served up to us on the mainstream news. Okay, there's plenty of people that like to do that all day. Like, there's people on my Facebook friends who all they do is post the garbage that gets served to them on the mainstream news, and they think they're actually on top of stuff. And it is, it's really frustrating sometimes not to engage each and every post, because it's so filled with layers of ignorance and just a lack of understanding of really how cynical the powers that be are, and the levers of power and the people that control what's really going on in the world, and the things that are really going on, that some of them are coming to light now, that people are desperately trying to keep from anyone talking about. Okay, so again, we're going to go down pretty deep eventually, but first, it's important that I'm going to start to have a relationship with you guys, and know what's important to you, and know who's resonating with what I'm talking about. So I encourage you to leave comments and give me feedback, okay, during, after, and all of that stuff, so that we can, continue to kind of make this really relevant, because I think it's, I can sit here in front of the green screen, I can show slides, I can put thoughts together, probably be a lot more, make a lot more sense than by trying to post a post every day on Facebook with long paragraphs and, an article or a picture or something. I think this is a better medium to communicate, and I hope it becomes a meaningful space for people who feel like there's not enough talk and community around really trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, so let me start with the slides, and this is where I'm still getting the technology together. But what I'm going to do to start is show a couple of keynote slides. So for this part, I have a different slideshow. I'm going to go full screen for you, but for this, I'm just going to sit here kind of next to it and show you and kind of talk it out with you guys, okay? So what I want to talk about before we even get started into the meat of the discussion today, and oh, hey, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad to see you guys here. Enos and Paula, I loved your video the other day, Enos. That was amazing. You look amazing, and so happy down there. Really jealous. I would rather be down there. So here's what we're going to talk about, okay? Not only tonight, but in the kind of coming days and weeks, okay? How should we, as a kind of awake public, subset of the public, assess what's happening right now, okay? These are like, I'm talking to you if you're a free thinker. I'm talking to you if you understand that there's more to the story than what you are being told on the news, and you may or may not have a feeling about what you might not being told, but that there's something, that there's something being hidden from you, and you look around and you see that what we can see out there in the world does not match what they're telling us to think about everything. So that's what I'm talking about. So if that's resonating with you, I'm talking to you right now, okay? And I want to talk about how do we know what we're being told is the real truth, right? Even the tidbits that they do give us. And so there's so many different sources of information, and, most people have a political agenda or a financial agenda behind what they're doing. And you know what, a minute, I have to pop back in here for a second, because this is something really important I have to tell you guys. I am, at least at this point, I'm not being paid by anybody, okay, to say what I say. I don't answer to anybody. I don't have to tell anybody's story unless I want to, okay? I get to say whatever I want here, and I just speak for myself, okay? So when I'm speaking, I'm not speaking for an organization. I'm not speaking for a political party. I'm not speaking for any other person or business or anything, okay? And if and when I have a financial interest in something, if I'm pitching an affiliate product so I can make some money and support myself through all of this or whatever, I'll tell you what it is. I'll say, look, I'm going to make some money if you buy this or if you click this or whatever. But in terms of these things, like, I'm just talking to you here, and it's just me, because I don't find I don't find we're getting enough meaningful dialogue. I think there's some, and I just want to have more of it, and I want to help facilitate it. And I hope that you guys will stay with me, and we can kind of, grow this and figure out kind of where we're going. Okay, so basically, what we have is the official story. Okay, that's kind of what they tell us. I kind of call that sheep food. Okay, that's like kind of what they spoon feed us and what they want us to believe, and what they want us to fight about and what they want us to kind of hook into and all of that. That's the kind of official story. That's one layer. And then there's like what we can see for ourselves. Okay, so like, and it a lot of times doesn't match what they're telling us. Okay, so we'll get into a lot of that, in terms of the restrictions and the lockdowns, but then the allowances that they make, and then some businesses that get to stay open, but then other ones that don't, and then how like none of the political leaders follow social distancing or masks or anything that they're making us do. Obama was golfing the other day, like in a country club, and nobody's allowed to go out and do anything. And Michelle Obama is on a robocall, like telling everybody to stay home. It's there's a lot of stuff that doesn't match kind of what we're being told. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Okay, and then there's what we're hearing. Okay, so when the media is not telling us the whole truth, and we can see with our own eyes and ears that it doesn't match what they're telling us, we start to fill in the blanks for ourselves. And that's kind of where conspiracy theories come from. And, we'll look over time at kind of what are some of those theories. We're not getting into that tonight. Tonight is all foundational. I really want to start kind of very methodically. And before we even talk about stuff, this is kind of I'm telling you how I think about stuff so that you can decide for yourself. First of all, if you want to share this video with somebody, if you feel that it's valuable perspective, if you feel like you kind of get where I'm coming from, I think it helps for you to know how I think certain ways, and in certain ways, certain times why. Maybe sometimes I'll share a personal story about like why I've come to believe certain things or change views on things or whatever. If it's relevant, I'm going to share. If you want to know, and I'm not saying ask, and we'll go from there. We'll do it together. So there's definitely other stuff happening at the same time that they're not telling us. And that's kind of what I call the view from above. So the massive shortages, in the stores, like in online, that's not, and the rationing, that is not due to people hoarding toilet paper. Okay, there's like factories produce so much toilet paper they could never stop. Okay, so there's a reason that these supply chains are breaking down. There's a reason that they don't want us to have these supplies. And then what do you think happens when billionaires are cashing out billions of dollars of stock, like Jeff Bezos, and then all of a sudden you can't get toilet paper and basic goods? So, those are some of the rabbit holes we will go down, not tonight, but as we get into this, okay? And hey, Shannon, how are you? I'm so glad you're here, Shannon. You're like one of my favorite heroes on the front lines. There's a lot of other stuff happening, and I just feel like we can start taking a closer look at it all together. Okay, and that's what this is about. That's where I'm coming from, okay? So I want to talk about what I'm calling the 5 perspectives or views, okay? And that helps when you're taking apart any issue from critical thinking to kind of know what perspective you're taking, okay? So first is on the ground view. That's what we can see for ourselves, okay? So that's kind of when we're in it, and you're just hit with a set of facts and conditions, and you may or may not know everything, but you've got real life situation, and you just have to deal. So all of a sudden we hear there's this virus and people are dropping like flies, and we know a lot of people that are dying or are sick, or we know people who do. It's a very small chain of separation. And so on the ground, there's a whole bunch of chaos, and that's like moving and changing really fast. And so that's what the press kind of uses to fearmonger, and that's what the leaders are using to kind of fearmonger, is that confusion. So it's important to know that when you're on the ground view, this is the takeaway for this little section, when you're taking the on-the-ground perspective in analyzing a situation. It's important to know that you're on-the-ground perspective and you can't see everything, okay? And you're only going to see what's in front of you and around you and maybe behind you, and it's going to be very difficult to see everything that's going on. Sometimes you need to drop down to that perspective and get really minute and just take things very methodically one step at a time, and that's kind of what we're doing here, is like taking the on-the-ground view in this whole process, okay? So then there's what I kind of touched on before. There's the sheep food. This is what the media tells us is happening. And this is how the media programs us to believe what they want us to believe. So they feed you a story, and then they spin it for a cycle, and then they go on to the next thing, okay? And a lot of people, and I was one of these people, and I think a lot of us were, for a lot of years, that we wanted to believe, and we really did believe. And that's a lot of us who, I'm not going left, right really a lot tonight, okay? Because I've been all over the map myself, and I feel like it's like I haven't changed, you know? I haven't changed, my values haven't changed, but like everyone I knew when I was on the left has changed. So I've seemed to have become on the right, but like I'm still the same guy, which is really weird. And so I think it's because I don't eat the sheep food. And I think a lot of people eat the sheep food. And so there's a lot there. Okay. And that's one perspective. So like I was talking about before, I have Facebook friends that I know, and I'm not going to call anyone out for this. They live on sheep food, okay? And all they know is what the media tells them. And if you try to talk to them, you're talking to a small little slice of a pie when you know all this other information, and they only know a teeny little slice of one little piece of that pie. And it's very frustrating to talk to people who only eat sheep food. So it's important to know that that's a layer too. Okay, so possible alternative scenarios, what we're hearing, that's kind of what I was saying on the slide before. Okay, so if you know you're not seeing everything from on the ground view, and you know, you're not going to live on the sheep food. You know that there's other information. So you're going to start looking. You're going to start listening. You're going to start paying attention. And you're going to start comparing notes with people. So that's positive alternative scenarios, okay? And when people, you know, start to say, okay, I hear, and the Bill Gates agenda and the vaccine agenda, and Fauci has patent, you know, investments and all of this stuff that we hear is going on, okay? So that is possible alternative scenarios that they don't talk about on the news in the mainstream. Okay, now here's the really cool stuff. Here's the view from above, and we're gonna. When I say we're going down rabbit holes, it's first you have to come up to like the 30,000-foot view, and you have to look at everything that's going on across a perspective, you know. And so you can't just look at the sheep food level. You look at every single thing that's going on. So you look at the restrictions to our movement and our freedom, and you look at them telling us that they need to do this contact tracing, so they want to find out, you know, where the virus goes. But what that really means is they want to track every single individual, who you get in contact with, how many people you're meeting with, and even what you're talking about, because they can follow you now through your cell phones. They can listen to you. They can do all kinds of stuff, and they are. Okay, even Ed Snowden was telling us this going way back. So it's like, you know, none of this is surprising, and it's way beyond conspiracy. And it's important to know that this stuff is happening on all these levels, okay? So then there's the spiritual lens, and we won't take that a lot, but I am Yogi Ev, my alter ego. So like occasionally, you know, look, look, let's cut it all down, okay? Like we're all energy soup, right? Like conscious energy soup, like underneath all the molecules and atoms and everything, we're all just like this pulsing wave of like sacred geometry with some consciousness, okay? So like all of us are here experiencing kind of a fractal, holographic experience of the whole universe, and it lives inside each of us as a unique expression, okay? So the universe lives in you as you. And basically, there's a lot. We share a collective consciousness, and there's a lot of deep stuff underneath the currents of physical reality that happened before we start to live in a physical reality that we're seeing, okay? So like what we're seeing is a manifestation of some inner condition. And so when I talk about the spiritual lens, it's like if you meditate and if you have a spiritual or religious practice and you listen and you sit quiet and you listen to messages from spirit side, what messages are coming through about what we're doing in this time and what is going on and maybe how we got here. So when we take that spiritual lens, it kind of goes in a completely different mindset from all of the other things that we just talked about. Okay, so it's just important. Like when I look at issues, I kind of tend to take one of these 5 perspectives, and I reserve the right to add perspectives if there's any that you think that I'm missing. I'd love to hear about that. And so that's what I'm kind of talking about in kind of the 5 perspectives. So having done that, I now can talk about kind of the second slideshow. And that's where, this is more the meat of it. Okay. So this is still foundational, but I want to go through, this presentation with you. So here, hold on. Let me see if I can do this right. I'm going to have to start this, and then let's see if I can choose the slides with my camera. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so so here we go. We're looking at why the lockdowns are unnecessary and unconstitutional. Okay, this is something that I am coming to from 2 different perspectives tonight, and I'm going to tell you about that. Okay, so the first thing is, here's what we know about COVID-19. Okay, so there's a real virus. Real people are dying, okay? And my heart breaks for people who are losing people. It seems that COVID-19 targets or affects a specific subset of individuals, and it is brutal to them, okay? And so it affects primarily the elderly, the critically ill, the immunocompromised, people with a weaker immune system, people with underlying health issues that may or may not be serious. And people in these vulnerable categories are at severe risk from COVID-19. That's what we do know. But we also know, especially from the recent testing that's being done, that about 90% of the people who get COVID-19 recover from it, okay? Because the coronavirus is a common cold virus, and just like the cold, I know, and the flu is not a common cold virus, but just like the cold and the flu takes out thousands of people every year, COVID-19 looks like it's the new kid in town that is equally or more or less deadly than the worst of them, okay? So that's what we can see now, okay? I know people in New York and New Jersey, and a lot of people are saying all the deaths. What about all the deaths there? You can't look at all of these deaths and say that there's nothing happening. And I'm not saying that there's nothing happening, and I think I've already covered that. So here's what I have to say about this, okay? And there's gonna be people who are gonna be pissed off at this next slide. I can tell you that already, okay? But it's like you're not paying me, and I don't have to please you, okay? So I'm sorry if you don't like what's coming up. But the truth of the matter is, okay, when it comes to New York, there's thousands of these deaths have been caused directly, in my opinion, by Governor Cuomo's horrible, horrible actions, okay? So I know he's really popular right now, and everybody likes him now. They didn't always like him that much before, he's always kind of thuggish. But, I always kind of liked him because I like kind of gruff Italian New Yorkers, and I like how he goes at it with his brother on TV. I think they're kind of cute together, and I think he's in a tough situation. So I'm not I'm not here to bust on Governor Cuomo, but I do think that he's responsible for thousands of deaths, and I think it's horrible, and I think he needs to be held accountable. I really do. He ordered nursing homes and elderly care facilities to admit COVID-19 patients, okay? And this allowed the virus to sweep through these facilities and kill thousands of elderly patients. And Governor Cuomo knew the virus was especially brutal to the elderly. It was a really stupid, irresponsible thing to do. It was reckless and wanton recklessness. It's like of the first of the gross magnitude, okay? His mandate was a death sentence to every person who died in a nursing care or a senior care facility in New York. What happened is the elderly should have been, and they should be, isolated from COVID-19. It should be the highest priority because they are among the most vulnerable. So instead of locking people in there, I mean, that's on the magnitude of locking people in the Houston Superdome and locking them in during Katrina. It's like, it's at that magnitude, okay? So that's what I have to say about the deaths in New York, unfortunately, okay? But this isn't about left and right, really. It's about right versus wrong, and that's really what we're trying to find out here, okay? So here's where we're going to get into the foundational building. What makes me qualified to talk about this stuff, okay? First of all, I do have some qualifications, and I'm going to get into them with you tonight. But it's like anybody who lives in the world and has to deal with what's going on right now is qualified to talk about this from their own perspective, okay? So on some level, that's all I'm doing. I'm just a human being talking about this from my perspective. There is some professional background that I have there, okay? It just so happens that as part of my consulting, I do some OSHA safety and health inspections, okay? So I had to do like 40 hours of training last year to qualify for some consulting. And in order to do that, I learned a lot about health and safety protocols. And there's a lot of really interesting and important stuff that's really easy to understand. So like, I thought it would be really helpful if I shared kind of what OSHA inspectors are taught in terms of protocols. It's not very difficult, and it will help us when we discuss kind of what's going on with the lockdown and stuff. So like, when I kind of had a light bulb moment a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that I could bring this lens into this discussion and help us unpack a little bit about kind of these lockdowns and some of the things that we're being asked to do, and where does that fit kind of in an OSHA kind of health and safety perspective, okay? Now, I haven't been doing this for a long time, so I don't purport to speak for OSHA in any way, shape, or form. In fact, OSHA has just issued new protocols for COVID-19 that I haven't even reviewed yet. They're that new. So I'm excited to get to know them. But I just thought I can bring this case because this helps in terms of how we're going to talk about this. Okay, so OSHA protocols for assessing and mitigating safety and health hazards. Okay, it's very specific what the protocols are. Okay. And it's always done in the same implementation order. So there's three things that we're going to look at, and they're kind of always done first, second, third, okay? So what that is first is engineering controls, okay? So engineering controls kind of are done in a way that can stop the hazard from happening in the first place. Okay, and we'll get into what some of those might be. Administrative controls, then, if you can't stop the hazard entirely from the engineering perspective, then you look at administrative controls. And administrative controls include rules and behavior modifications. So the lockdowns would go under that category. And so the third is personal protective equipment, or PPE. And we hear a lot about that now on the news, and masks and gloves. That's all PPE. So PPE is considered the last line of defense. It doesn't take the risk away, but it reduces the risk of you actually getting infected with whatever it is, whatever that hazard is, okay? So going forward into the OSHA protocols, we'll unpack the engineering controls a little bit right now. So engineering controls will stop the hazard from ever happening in the first place, okay? So what they talk about is if there's a safe and effective vaccine. So I think there's legitimate questions as to whether that's even possible because of the vaccine ingredients, a lot of them are toxic, and there's also a financial motive in a lot of the vaccines that are being pushed on us. And so that's, again, we're not going down the Bill Gates rabbit hole tonight, but we will. I promise you, we're going to go deep on that one. So prophylactic medicines, so kind of experimental or off-the-shelf medications like hydroxychloroquine or remdesivir, things that could either knock out a virus before you get it, stop you from getting it, or treat it in the early stages. That's prophylactic. So, and then there's herd immunity. So that would be from enough of the population actually getting COVID-19 and recovering. So then we wouldn't actually have to, fear getting the virus because we would actually have developed a robust immune system. So, all of these things are kind of under engineering controls. Although herd immunity, they try to lump that into vaccines and say if they can create herd immunity through vaccines. I think that is a lie, personally, and that's another rabbit hole they'll have to go down. But I don't want to get sidetracked on that, okay? So another engineering control would be if they could otherwise kill or eliminate the virus so it poses no significant risk to anybody. So we've been looking at, UV lights and stuff that kill viruses and bacteria from surfaces, and that would be an example of a protocol of an engineering control. For instance, if there was a risk of the virus spreading on your office keyboards or whatever, and they can put this UV light on them and keep them sterilized at all times, and they'd be safe for humans, but it would eliminate or kill the virus, that's an example of an engineering control that could potentially knock out the risk. If that makes sense, that's kind of where the engineering controls are coming from. So, now we move on to administrative controls, okay? So that's kind of the meat of where we're living right now under the boot of authority right now and authoritarianism. So when engineering, but we're talking OSHA right now. So let's just back off my kind of war heroes, warrioring for freedom for everybody stance here, and talk about OSHA protocols, okay? So we just went through engineering controls, and we're now on administrative controls. When engineering controls can't eliminate the hazard, then behavior modifications, rules, and regulations intended to mitigate the hazard can be passed. And so that's what these lockdowns really are. Stay-at-home orders, forced business closures, restrictions to commerce. All of those things are administrative controls. But the question is, are they necessary, okay? And are they even effective? Social distancing rules, parks and beaches closures, other draconian measures, rules requiring masks and other PPE to go outside or into businesses. So all of these are examples of administrative controls, okay? So again, trying to control the risk by controlling the behaviors that could potentially lead to the hazard. Okay, does that make sense? And so that's why administrative controls come into play. Now, in this particular situation with the lockdowns, there are constitutional law issues that come into play. Because when there are overly restrictive administrative controls, they might actually trample on the constitutional rights of American citizens, which then has to then take on another perspective, which we're going to go into tonight, because thankfully I'm also a lawyer and I can talk about constitutional law with some confidence and some knowledge that I can share with you guys. So when engineering and administrative controls do not do the job and you're still faced with a risk, okay, and this happens all the time, then we go to PPE, personal protective equipment, okay? So when administrative and engineering controls still can't fully eliminate the hazard, you need PPE, Okay, so PPE does not eliminate the hazard, but it does mitigate the risk to the individual. Okay, so when the let's see, medical and healthcare workers use PPE to protect themselves from infections, and sometimes it works, better than others. Usually, infections only happen when PPE fails. Okay. Surgical masks, gloves, paper clothing, face shields, other protective clothing and gear, all of those stuff go into the category of PPE. So PPE will shield a person from respiratory particles that carry COVID-19 if it's the right stuff, okay? COVID-19 carriers protect others by wearing masks in enclosed and crowded spaces. So like if they cough or sneeze, then their sneeze and cough particles would stay in if they're wearing the right kind of masks. One of these days soon, we're going to go look at some mask tests that have been done, because it looks like all of the laws where they're telling us that we need to have a cloth mask are completely ineffective, and cloth masks are horrible. So it's kind of like if we're not going to wear medical masks, we shouldn't be wearing masks at all. And then there's another issue of should we even be wearing masks at all. So we continue. It is my position, and again, I'm speaking for myself here, but I think there's a lot of people that agree with me, that 100% of the lockdown orders in place today are unconstitutional. 100% of all the lockdown orders in place today, in my opinion, are unconstitutional and should be immediately lifted. Okay? And I will unpack that for you, of course. Okay? This is my State Bar of California membership card. I am a retired lawyer. I'm on inactive status. Okay, so you'll see at the bottom of the card it says only attorneys on active status are eligible to practice law. So I'm not practicing law here, okay, but I am allowed to call myself a lawyer. I pay for the right. And so here's my disclaimers. I am not practicing law. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not speaking for anybody. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not trying to cure any diseases. I'm not trying to diagnose any diseases. All this FDA bullshit that I have to say goes right here under disclaimers, okay? So I already made some before. I'm not making any money on this, so I shouldn't have to make any disclaimers. So here's the deal. I may not be practicing law anymore, and I haven't for a long time, but I still do know my constitutional law issues, okay? And I'm going to tell you why I know my constitutional law issues, okay? This incredible woman is Nadine Strossen. Nadine Strossen was my constitutional law professor at New York Law School. And Nadine was president of the ACLU for 20 years after she left New York Law School. I loved her class. Nadine also is the author of the book Hate, Why We Should Resist It with Free Speech and Not Censorship. And she also wrote the book Defending Pornography. That was the book that came out when I was still in law school. Free Speech, Sex, and the Fight for Women's Rights. So Nadine Strossen. Oh, hey, Vanessa. How are you? I'm so glad you're here. I am just telling you guys about this because Nadine taught me a lot, okay? And she took a really brave perspective. I mean, just think of a woman defending pornography when everybody is out there saying how pornography was, the worst thing in the world. And so she had a constitutional issue with it, okay? So what Nadine always said is our constitutional rights and freedoms are defined at their limits, okay? So what that means is, think about that. And one of the biggest cases for free speech was the People v. Larry Flynt. And you might have seen that movie, The People versus Larry Flynt. And Larry Flynt was a publisher of Hustler magazine, and really, really raunchy, smutty, slutty stuff. And just he got taken, so many times he had to go fight. And he was arrested for obscenity and all of this stuff. And he won some pinnacle cases in his pinnacle case of free speech. defined free speech, not just for the porno industry, but for everyone else. Okay. And so that's what it means. Like you may not always like the people on the edge. Okay. But they're the ones that define where the boundaries are. Okay. So, you can't go past where that was. Okay. So it's important that Nadine would defend pornography. Now, when she led the ACLU for 20 years, they were still doing good work. Okay. Now they're like a hack organization that, has lost their actual liberal values. The ACLU were the ones that defended the Nazis when they wanted to march in Skokie, Illinois, decades ago, and I think Alan Dershowitz even worked on that. And so the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, basically is saying, look, civil liberties are for all. They're not just for the people we like. And so it's the ugly business of freedom is that you have to defend people who are at the edges and beyond the edge of what you might think is appropriate. And you might not even like them. But if you're talking about their freedom to speak and their freedom to be expressive and other people's freedom to be able to consume the content that they like, and so other people have to be free to be able to produce and create and distribute that content and publish it. And so free speech and freedom of assembly, we have a right to get together, and we're going to get into that too. So I just, really admire and respect Nadine Strawson, and she taught me more about constitutional law. And so when I talk about constitutional issues, I'm really talking from the perspective that I learned from Nadine Strawson. So I wanted to share that with you guys. Now, right now, I would say we are at our limits. We are at our limits of what should be acceptable in a democracy, in a democratic republic. We are being asked to do things that are unreasonable and not in line with the science and not in line with logic and reason. And they've moved the goalposts several times already. And unfortunately, most of the population are sheep, and they're going along with the sheep food, and they are okay with any number of draconian restrictions to the point of even ratting out their friends and neighbors. Okay. So that's a problem for people who are free thinkers and understand the limits that we're at right now, because freedom for all is very fragile. There has rarely been an extended period of time on the planet in history where populations were free. It's been relatively little. We take it for granted because we're on the ground view. Okay, we live for, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. And during that time, we don't think about what happened much before we died, and we may not think of what's going to happen much, 100 years after we're gone. So that's what, we're on the ground view. And like when we're underground, it's gone. So it's like we have to understand that right now is not a normal thing. We can't be okay with it. It shouldn't be something that we just wait out and watch more Netflix. It is highly irresponsible behavior at this time, okay? But it's like if you're a sheep and you can't think for yourself and you can't think critically, I don't want to be all judgmental, It's like I'd rather have you tune in and wake up. I'd rather have you go down the rabbit hole with me, because I'm not doing this just to talk to the people who agree with me. This is like what some of my older friends don't understand. Like when I say I'm up-leveling and I'm losing people and I'm getting new people, it's not that it's, it's important for everybody who feels like they're seeing something that's not right to have a place in a space where we can put our thoughts together. We can talk to other people. We don't get censored. We don't get shamed into silence. And it's important that we have a place like that. So it's like, I don't even know how long Facebook Live will allow once it starts getting out what, my perspectives are on some of these things. I don't know how long they'll allow these videos to go. So hopefully, we'll be able to do this for a while. Okay, so I think we're at our limits right now. Okay, the lockdowns, in my opinion, are unconstitutional and they must be struck down. Okay, Paula, I agree with you. It's like, let me put this one up here. Is that, let's see. Oh, there's Paula. I'm over these people using this virus as their sugar daddy and wanting to live off the government. Well, it's like we're getting these stimulus checks. I haven't gotten mine, by the way, and I could actually benefit from that pretty soon. But what happened to my other window? Oh, you know what I did? Here we go. Let's see. Let's go back full screen here. Are we back where we started? Okay, I'll do comments after, honey. So feel free to comment throughout, and like when I'm done with this thing, if anybody's still here with me, we can do comments and talk to each other. So look, the lockdowns are unconstitutional and they must be struck down, and we're going to get into that tonight. Okay, here's a constitutional law primer for non-lawyers. This will be helpful. Individual rights are inalienable and they are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That means they can't be taken away. Okay, for the government to pass any law restricting individual rights, there must be a fundamental state interest that outweighs the individual's interest in their personal freedom. Okay, fundamental state interest trumps individual interest. Okay, so that's because the collective, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. Okay, so even so, okay, when there is a fundamental state interest, the government must then use what's called the least restrictive means, and it must be narrowly tailored to solve the issue. Okay, so again, the solution when there's a fundamental state interest that overweighs the individual rights, okay, it's not that the individual rights go away. They stay there because they're inalienable. Inalienable. Okay, thank you. But the government's fundamental state interest is said to outweigh the individual interest. So the individual interest and the right of the individual stays there. But overweighing that with the boot, okay, is the fundamental state interest. But the founders were really good when they drafted the Bill of Rights because they then limited the government with two really important limits. Okay, the first is narrowly tailored, and the second is least restrictive means. And that's where I'm going to show you tonight, and hopefully in the days to come, but hopefully tonight, that already based on the narrowly tailored and least restrictive means tests, every single lockdown, state to state, city to city, is unconstitutional and should be immediately lifted. That is my opinion. Okay? Any laws that are either not narrowly tailored, okay, or seek to employ more than the least restrictive means that are necessary to achieve that fundamental state interests are unconstitutional, and they are null and void, actually, according to case law. And I don't have this slide to show you, but there is case law that says that any law which is unconstitutional because it violates the Constitution is already null and void, even before it's declared that. Now, in reality, you would have to go to the federal courts and have it declared unconstitutional. You have to win. You have to argue your case. But it is effectively thought and said to already be null and void. Okay, like you don't have to follow it. So here's why the lockdowns are unconstitutional, in my opinion. The city and state lockdowns go far beyond the least restrictive means necessary. In fact, the lockdown rules in many cases do not even make any medical sense whatsoever, okay? And those in power who ordered these lockdowns have all violated the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights specifically, okay? So let's talk about this slide for a second. So if the lockdowns go beyond the least restrictive means necessary, like for instance, if you look at a state like Michigan, where the governor of Michigan, an incredibly greedy, power-hungry woman, who is definitely cynically using this virus to grab power and launch herself onto the world stage. It's actually quite disgusting. Has done things as draconian as made it illegal to buy food seeds and paint, and said that they're not essential. So like you're locked down at your house, you're not allowed to leave for a month, but you can't paint your house or you can't plant your garden. Like you can't actually do things that improve your life for no reason. Like the superstores that she allows to stay open are allowed to stay open, but they have to close different sections with different items that she has deemed to be unessential. That is an exact example of what I'm saying goes far beyond the least restrictive means necessary. The nerve of that woman, she should be recalled and she should be humiliated. It's disgusting. And I feel really sorry for the people in Michigan. So like I have friends who don't understand why I care, because things like I can still go out on my bike whenever I want and I can still go out to, do shopping and whatever, but it's not about me. It's like when there's things happening to our fellow Americans and we're not up in arms about it, okay, there's a problem, okay? We would expect them to look out for us. We got to look out for them. There's all this talk about togetherness. I think togetherness is really important when people's rights start to be violated. Then other people need to stand up. It's our civic responsibility. So, people or some of my ex-friends or people who say like, what am I doing besides Facebooking or whatever? It's like, I'm just trying to share thoughts. I know that there's people thinking about this stuff. I know there are. So we need to put it in a framework where it makes sense. So we're not just confused, or we're not just frustrated, or we're not just whining, or we're not just complaining. Okay, we can actually start to unpack it piece by piece. And from a constitutional perspective, if there's lawyers, if you know lawyers, and you want to send them this video, I believe that there's class action lawsuits that can be filed right now in every single city and state in the country. We should be petitioning Attorney General Barr, who's already said that there's constitutional issues happening in the states in some cities with these overgrabs. So that should be happening right now. It should be on full blast. Like, these go far beyond the least restrictive means necessary. There's all kinds of hypocrisy in these rules that don't allow certain businesses, but they force other ones to close. And people are going to die from that, okay? Like from the loss of their businesses and their lives and their purposes and all of that stuff. We have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All of this stuff is violated by these lockdowns, and they're going way overboard, and they are not necessary, especially with the latest science that we're seeing, okay? So here's another reason why we can't trust what they're telling us. The COVID-19 death numbers are being inflated, and including deaths from other causes, okay? So this is a slide from the CDC's own website, from the National Vital Statistics System, and it talks about what it's called provisional death counts for coronavirus 19, okay? And so what I've underlined a couple of lines there, okay? And it shows that the death counts can include laboratory-confirmed cases as well as cases without laboratory confirmation. Do you understand what that means? It means that they don't even know for sure if someone has COVID. They can say that they have COVID. If the certifier suspects COVID or determines it was likely, they can report COVID-19 as a probable or presumed on the death certificate, okay? So a lot of these deaths that are being reported are being conflated, and a lot of them are not even being tested for COVID, and they're just people say, oh yeah, I think they must have had COVID. And there's a rabbit hole we're going to go down, not today, but soon, where I'm going to show you evidence that hospitals are being incentivized financially to count COVID deaths and to put people on ventilators. So there's a big problem that is happening, and it's happening on a lot of levels. Okay, so this here is Dr. Ezike, the director of the Department of Public Health. I hope that when I play this slide, you're able to hear the sound from the slide. I'm going to mute my own microphone while I play this slide because there might be feedback. And when I'm done, if you can just give me a thumbs up or something if you can hear the volume of her slide, because I've never done this part of the technology before. So if not, we'll find another way to play it for you. But actually, there's actually words, so you can read the captions even if you can't hear. But I hope you can hear. So here we go.
I just want to be clear in terms of the definition of people dying of COVID. So the case definition is very simplistic. It means at the time of death, it was a COVID positive diagnosis. So that means that if you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. It means that technically, even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death. So everyone who's listed as a COVID death doesn't mean that that was the cause of the death, but they had COVID at the time of death. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the slideshow. So that's kind of what I wanted to go through with you guys tonight, okay? Let me see if I can I need to get off the screen, and there we go. Now I can get back to my main window, and I can see if there's anybody still here. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover tonight, okay? The numbers are being inflated. It doesn't mean people aren't dying. It does mean that there's things that we're not being told. Okay, so in our future videos, and I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to do this kind of once a week, twice a week, or almost every day, or just whenever I feel like it. I'm really going to be looking for feedback, or as soon as I may not always have slides, but I think it helps when I do. So a lot of this stuff is going to come together, and I need your help to figure out how to give you guys the best content in the best format. So I hope this was a good one for you today. We're just over the hour mark, so I think that's enough for today. I will come back soon and we'll talk more. I hope that I laid the foundation today for an interesting ongoing discussion that we can have. Okay, and if you found this valuable, if you think it's going to be valuable, please share it, do all that stuff, like and share and comment so that other people can find this. And we're going to get really deep together. We're going to go down a lot of these rabbit holes because I'll watch videos with you guys. I'll show you some articles. And instead of just kind of commenting on Facebook and getting in little comments with people, I'll do one of these and then we can look at stuff together. And over time, what I believe is going to happen is you're going to see these pieces fit together. Now, I am not telling you that I know what's going on and what's the ultimate agenda. And a lot of people ask me that, like, what's the agenda and why, and sometimes I know if it's vaccine or if it's, big pharma related, I can usually let you know. But a lot of times we don't know yet because we're kind of in that on the ground level. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is look at evidence and put things up on the board for us to talk about and us to look at so that we can decide if we think something's going on. Okay. And so there might be some topics as we progress that are so heated or incendiary that I might want to split off into like a private or secret group for those things. So there might be, if you really want to go deep on some of that rabbit hole stuff, I think I want to go there, but I don't necessarily want to go there in my normal regular public show. So we might do a private show just for a smaller subset of people who really want to go deep on some of the real deep conspiracy stuff, but from a perspective of actual curiosity, not trying to prove or debunk, but just trying to look at all the information and what's being said and kind of unpack it and say, does this warrant us to talk about? there's a lot of that stuff. There's documentary going around. People have been looking at a lot of really interesting movies that are kind of exposing stuff. So that's a whole other layer of stuff. So look, we got a lot of places to go. I think this was a decent start, and we're going to get into it a lot more. So anyone who's here, does anyone have any questions tonight before we go? Let me look at some of these comments. A lot from Paula. I love you, Paula. Thank you for being here and for commenting. Let's see. I think I see Ian here. I don't know who's still here. I don't know if Enos is still here. But okay, so we've covered enough. If you have comments, put them in the comments. If you have questions, and I'll engage with you there over the next couple of days with this in between videos. Okay, so if you like it, share it. And let me know what you think. I think I already repeated myself. So I should say goodnight, and let me say goodnight with a little bit of music, because that's always fun to do. And there we go. So this was Evan Talks. Thank you for coming tonight. I love you guys. We have a lot of work to do together, and I'm glad we're going to do it together. Okay, thanks for coming. I will see you soon. Soon we'll have a schedule. Soon I might even be broadcasting from my Evan Talks page. Right now, everything's coming off my Facebook profile, facebook.com/Evan Kopelson. For now, follow me there, get notifications, and I will see you soon at the next one. Thank you.